And what I love about us, about our conversations is that we're both in the trenches every single day. We're building companies, we're developing teams, and we're also living a life, right? It's awesome to hear about you and Ty and about you and your family and about the way you treat your team like family. So, I love that. I love that you're in Club 28. I love the conversations that we have when we talk in that. And although all of our conversations are focused mostly on or a lot on growing revenue, not mostly, but a lot on, they're also focused on paperwork and contracts and relationships and picking money up that's being left on the table and systematizing things along the way. So you could go from 5 to 10 million or 10 million to 20 million or 30 million or 50 million. And every new level of growth kind of becomes your new low, because now there's systems in place, there's people in place, there's people who are taking ownership of those systems. But it doesn't start that way, right?
Right.
And that's kind of what I was hoping today was going to be all about, going through how it starts, going through the mental good and the mental anguish and the shit that people don't talk about really when they're growing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that's it. Like you, before we started recording, I was mentioning a couple of things that I was hoping we could go over, because some of the topics that you and I have covered and that you have just blazed through are rebranding a company. And by the way, I'm going to touch on things that take people 6 months to a year sometimes. And all these things, including so much more you've done over the last year or so, right? It's rebranding, it's creating a new company, it's partnership contracts, right? It's annual team meetings. Whoa, that's a huge thing. And you got that coming up this weekend. Key metrics, developing key metrics, and taking an online business offline and talking about potentially going into stores, right? So all these massive things that literally are stumbling blocks in so many companies' lives, you're just banging through. Like every week we talk about new shit.
Oh, it's been, well, as you know, having witnessed it firsthand, it's quite the whirlwind, and getting right back to the start of it, and again, scale is, everybody in the internet world, scale means we're scaling, and that just means front end acquisition. They're not really scaling. What they're doing is making more sales. And
most people don't know what the word scale actually means.
Yeah,
hey, I ran a new launch.
Yeah, we're scaling, and it's like, what? Sorry, what you're making more sales? Awesome. You're not scaling yet, because when you start that process, it looks very different than just having a funnel that works. Like a lot of, you get one funnel that works, that's fine, and that can be the seed to develop the systems and the processes that you need to scale. And so, those two things need to be very clear, because some of the people that we come across, whether it's online or offline, they just don't understand exactly what that means. And for us, we certainly fell victim to that in some respect. It's a catch-22. You can come to these systems and the personnel in order to make some of these things happen, whether it's buying media, whether it's hiring customer service, whether it's building really good experience for your customer in the back end. It all takes money, and sometimes you need to just focus on one channel, and that channel being acquisition up front to initiate that process. But if you simply rely on that, you'll be dead inside 6 months, 7 months, or whatever the life of that offer might be. And it's pretty rare for people to have multiple unicorns that can generate 30, 40, 50 million dollars in a year. And if you are successful in that way, and you have that ability to do that, then that's wonderful. And maybe that's the only model you ever run. But to build something sustainable that you can actually put your name on, where you're not just grabbing a customer, squeezing the lemon for everything it's worth, and chucking it out the door in that kind of churn and churn away to build that brand that really, might catch the eye of a larger company that might fit into their scheme of growth or whatever, and be acquired. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah. So it's like, it's the difference between building a product that does well or building a brand.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's define scale, because I think the great number of people, it's this vague grayness in front of them when like you and I were joking before, and we've joked in the past about scale being, hey, I ran a new launch, we're scaled, oh terrific, or you know what, I'm scaling my media spend. Like
Yeah, well, that's the biggest one. Yeah,
it's thrown out there because it makes people sound intelligent when they say it, but scaling a company is something that is creating a duplicatable process. So it's growing, right? So doing what, like you have a very, very strong core competency that helps a company to grow. And there's a lot of internet marketers, there's a lot of online businesses, offline businesses, entrepreneurs, leaders that can get that initial momentum, but don't understand how to maintain that momentum. So scaling is really growing and then putting systems in place to support that growth, and then putting a team in place to support those systems, and then growing more and putting systems in place to support that growth, and putting teams in place to support that systems, and then looking back and making sure that these old systems are updated so that trajectory can be continued, right? That's scale, so that you and I can sleep at night, and so that people who own a company can have a life, as opposed to constantly be implementers, right? So here's a cool thing to talk about. You're not an implementer anymore. Like, you were an implementer. You were an so I'm going to make a statement, and tell me if it's true or not, but my guesstimate is that you were at a few $1 million a year or under $1 million a year for many years. And during those years, you were probably an implementer, where you were like, this shit has to be done. Let me fucking do this shit. I think without knowing it, you took a step back and you started to think more like a CEO than as a than as a business owner, a regular business owner.
Yeah.
That thought process takes you away from being an implementer and turns you into
by implementer. Sorry to interrupt. Do you mean customer service rep? Because that's what I did it all.
I've got my hat on for customer service. Let me take that shit off. Now I got my pay-per-click hat on. Wait, let me take that shit off. Now I got my everything. It's freaking
totally. Oh yeah, dude. So much. But you're so right. Yeah, absolutely. It's if you think in that mindset, and if you're like, I need to do it all, and you're that, whether it's a control thing or whether it's a resources thing, or you just don't know what to, you're just going to stay flatlined, in your growth. And it's not even fair to call it growth. You'll just have something that might work, and then it'll just either fade away or continue to just exist in that linear state. I think that unless you are embracing the knowledge required to run a company, which I did not have at the start of this outset. I was a cop, as you know, running a tactical unit. I didn't think about having, it's very interesting because that's the public sector mindset. They only have to deal with, their money is given to them, and then they just have to be fiscally responsible. You would hope, as a taxpayer, they're fiscally responsible in their spending. When you're responsible for getting that money and allocating its route through the various channels in your business, it's a big responsibility. And if you don't know how to build those systems to prop up that process, and then the growth, you either need to read or surround yourself with smart people, which is what I do.
Okay, so that's a good thing to go into, because that's the secret, right? So you mentioned a couple of different things, and I'm sorry, I'm taking notes as we go by, because I want to touch on some of the things you're saying. First, I don't know, like you mentioned something about, I don't know if it's you don't know whether you shouldn't be an implementer or not, but you have to do everything yourself because you think you do it better. I'm a big believer that it's either ego or you don't know what you don't know yet. You
No.
don't know that you should be stepping away yet. You don't
Yeah.
know that it's time. And there's a giant amount of fear that keeps you in that don't know area, because I fear that if I step back and I give some power away, shit's going to go down, like bad shit's going to go down.
Sure.
And as growth-minded people and folks who actually scale companies, they become very good at giving power to people, like giving more power away than holding on to it.
Well, that's the essence of leadership in some respect. I mean, it costs you nothing to lift other people up, when you can be vulnerable, when you can be open to collaboration, when you know that somebody else possesses your core competency and you can or possesses a core competency that you do not, and you can bring them in and say, I don't understand that. Explain that to me. Going back to the example of running a team, let's say prior to running a business, I wasn't the best sniper on the team. I wasn't the best breacher. I wasn't the best shot. But even as the team leader, I would have all of those people around me to provide the best advice and guide, that mission to success. And that was what my core competency was building a team. Mm-hmm. And now in business, I find myself doing the very same thing. It's why am I going to try to learn everything? I'm not going to learn buying media. Are you kidding me? Like I'm not going to learn how to write a plugin for WordPress. No, you're wasting your time. Guys that are still doing like, oh, I want to do my landing pages and things like, come on, like you're wasting valuable time. That stuff can get done in a split second, and you can be on to building, that structure that's necessary for growth, right?
Yeah. And we both know people who probably still build their own web pages, and they're doing great. By the way, I'm not laughing at this. So I mean, I am. I did just laugh at it. I'm on camera. I can't lie about it. I did just laugh at it. I did not laugh in it. I laughed. Fuck it. So in the end,
you just want to push them. But before I forget, I want to touch on something that you talked about as well, and it's the fear of it, because without question, people that I talk about business to, and I really get granular with the discussion, what it always falls back to is fear. Whether, there's two kinds of fear. There's acute, where it's, holy fuck, I'm going to get eaten by this lion, or it's chronic, where you're always worried, always, is this going to be okay? And you never take that leap, you never take that step. And chronic fear and the ability to overcome that is what differentiates people, I believe, from maintaining their status quo in their life and living a life that has either an extremely high amount of regret, or looking back, where they're going to regret never having taken that chance. When you have the ability and the processes to conquer that, be vulnerable, all of these things that we're going to talk about in terms of growth, man, you've crossed a bridge that will lead you to unparalleled success, in my opinion.
Yeah. What do you believe has been something that has given you, like, let's forget your military background.
Sure.
I think that was trained in, and I'll explain to you what I mean in a second. And let's forget about the success. Let's go back prior to all that and figure out what is it that gave you the confidence to kind of break through that and to not have that fear. Like in my life, it was reading books initially, because I didn't have the money to work with anybody. but it was reading, and it was looking for a few things that I could implement into a company or my life to become more productive. And then when I had more money, it was aligning with a few people who had track records of doing shit that I wanted to do, and then picking their brains and achieving in a few months or a year what would have probably taken me and what was taking my friends 10 plus years to achieve. Yeah. And then it was, getting a board of directors together, people who just literally help to brainstorm on my companies to help me grow. So those were my stages. What are yours?
I'll have you here.
Yeah. Yeah, you cut out for a second.
Yeah, sorry, we cut. So you were last discussing the part where you brought in your board of directors who really guided you in terms of building a company. So to back right up to what I think was what gave me the confidence, there were a couple of things. One was I've grown up, and as long as I can remember, I've wanted to build something, build a business, invent something. Everybody has that, who ends up in the entrepreneurial space to some degree, or running their own business, has that really deep desire to be autonomous and to rely on themselves for their own success, because they have a deep belief that they are capable. So there are things along the way that might restrict that or change that belief. And for me, from the period of 19 until I was 42, 43, at 19, I had a daughter. And so that really directed my life in terms of wanting to provide and sort of putting those other desires to build a business and be out in the private sector, because I felt a deep need to provide for my family. And I felt the most secure way to do that was to serve, and that started with the military and then the police department for, just over 20 years between the two of those. But always having that deep core point, I started reading. And then in 2005, 2006, I started studying online stuff, and getting around people who were doing these online sales, and just learning all the way up to, it still doesn't stop. But really that was the initial point. 2008, I started to follow coaching groups that were doing strictly online business, and we started to build YouTube channels and those kinds of things. Then really around 2014, where I went a little further in on a coaching group, a mastermind group, that was where it completely changed the trajectory of everything that I was doing, right up until, now being part of Club 28. It always, you will see these sales letters, you'll see these pitches, and they'll be like, it's an easy investment at 10K, and everybody's like, holy fucking shit, 10K. I have yet to do one of those things that is not 10x itself. And I don't say that to be a fucking sales page for anybody, because I don't give a shit, because there's a lot of fucking douches out there selling shit that doesn't 10x anything. If you do your background, if you do your research, ask questions, find the right fit for you, it always results in exponential growth. I don't care what anybody says. It's
yeah, but you know what? That's a tough thing to say, right? Because a lot of that is in you. Yeah. So, my argument would be, you could go to let's forget about Club 28, because sure, what we do together is one-on-one. Like, there's nobody who even gets accepted into our advisory program unless I believe that they are action takers, right? Yeah, so forget about this, but let's go back to masterminds where like you could be sitting and you'd have a person on your right and a person on your left, and they're not action takers. They could be hearing the exact same thing. They could be networking with the exact same people, and they will leave thinking they lost money, and you will leave and you will 10x or more Like
Yeah.
that's a conservative statement for a lot of the tools and tactics that you pick up at masterminds.
Sure.
So it is in you. It is the traits that say, prior to going to this mastermind group, prior to going to this meeting, prior to going to this seminar, prior to having any meeting, whether it's with my team or with my advisors or with my mastermind group or with my partners, prior to go to any meeting, you literally write down what you want to get out of that. And
Yeah.
so that's forefront of the real estate of your mind there. And you are, that's what you're focused on. The people who go there and they're sitting right next to you and they're like, yeah, I hope I get something out of this. They said I was going to get something out of this. They're
Yeah.
literally looking for golden nuggets.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that chase shiny objects. They, oh, you know what? This might work and this might work, but you're going there with a strategy and a plan. And that's why you grow. And that's why, like I was saying before, for years, you were growing a company as an implementer, but let's just put numbers to that. For years, you were in the 6 or 7 figure range.
Yes.
And now you're mid 8s, right?
Yes.
You are growing and you are,
Yeah.
the conversations that we have are all growth conversations. None of these are, hey, Chris, can you diagnose this funnel? It's not that,
Yeah.
we're talking about stuff that is outside the box and that literally compounds the organization that you're creating and allows it to grow.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Like my focus, even, I'll try not to be too much of a tool to my team and get it and say, oh, fuck, I hate that button color, but occasionally I hate a button color and I can't help myself. But having said that, if there's anything and the opportunity that I've been afforded through building this stuff, it's to grow other people. And the first thing that I learned is that I'm not great at it. And so there I have this ability to really hone my own skill set to maximize and to bring out the most out of everybody on my team. When you're given a handful of A players and you're given a title of team leader, but they're A players, it's like, what do you have to do? But when you've got a team that is learning and they come in, they don't even know the business, and you can communicate with them in a way that they feel supported, that they feel like they're valued, that they feel like they're learning something, then you're starting to succeed, and as that filters down to the people that you bring on board, you can identify their ability to do that, because ultimately I know that my core competency is not as a strong communicator. I can communicate and I can be compassionate and engage with my team, but I am not a solid teacher. I don't fundamentally convey messages adapted in a way that it works for everybody on my team. But I recognize that in somebody, I can bring that person in. So what's exciting about building, starting from that 6-figure to 7-figure and then 7-figure hitting the mid 8s, is the opportunity to really understand who I am in an organization, how I can facilitate growth of this entity, which is something that I'm extraordinarily passionate about, but also have everybody on that team achieve their dreams along the way, right? I want them, if this thing can, and this core group, this team that I have gets to travel the world, gets to put their college education for their kids in a nice bank account and still enjoy their own finer things that they want to do. Mission accomplished. I tell you that for sure.
And you're living that right now. I mean, this coming,
sure,
you're going to be bringing your team out, and I mean, the experience that you've explained to me that they're going to have is something that, number one, they could probably never afford to do on their own.
Yeah.
Two, it's going to bond them. Like the number one reason to get people
Yeah.
together in an annual meeting is to create a bond within the company, because when people are bonded, they do far more to grow the company, right? Because they're not just working as individuals anymore. Now they know people personally and they're working as a team. The second big reason for an annual meeting is to set the vision, to explain what's been happening, to reward everybody, right? With recognition. I'm not talking about handing out checks, but with recognition and saying, hey, I want so much to help you to have the life and the future that you want to have, that's why we're here. That's why we came to this place, because this was some place that I thought everybody would love to share. Now let's talk about what you really want to achieve and how the company's going to help you achieve it. And now let's talk about how that fits into where the company is going, right? And we build this marriage between their life, the path that they need to walk, and the path that brings us to our goal. And when we align those two, people take it personally, and they do so much more to grow. So that's exciting. Hey, so the number one thing from what I'm hearing you say, which is something that I believe in, the number one thing to focus on to grow a company is to focus on developing people.
Yeah. That, and that I always run parallels between my old life and my new life. That gets lost somewhere along the way. In some organizations, you do nothing without people. And case in point is my own experience in starting out in business. I simply could not succeed without the help of other people around me. And at that point in time, yes, you're just a group of people and you're like, hey, can you get this done? Thanks for your help. You try to be grateful for their assistance and that kind of stuff. But you're not really contributing to their life other than they're taking a paycheck or what have you. But when you really help people achieve their own vision for their life, and part of your mission as a CEO, COO, visionary, whatever you want to call these various terms that are out there these days. When you hold that close to your heart and get satisfaction out of that, you're going to see, in my opinion, some very people who are committed to your own, and again aligned, but committed to the growth of that organization, that entity, and then do really, really phenomenal work. And what's exciting for me right now is through our last team meeting, which really wasn't that structured. It was kind of our first kick at the cat. Is it cat or can? Nah, I don't know. Anyways, instead of just being a group of people, you watch this evolution of the development of a team where it's just individuals, and we'll touch on this more, I'm sure, but you're just a group of people doing a common thing, to now you're this team where you're starting to really know each other and look after each other, and taking care of those things, and somebody batting cleanup for somebody else to make sure the job gets done so that this entity, this brand can flourish. It's exciting just to listen to these different personalities that are so fundamentally different on opposite sides of the spectrum, to watch them collaborate and to respect each other's differences. It's exciting stuff. It's really exciting stuff.
So let's go into that, because this is, as you know, a passion of mine. I start to geek out when I talk about developing leaders. And so I'll try not to go too deep into the rabbit hole here, but sure. But it's a huge topic, and it's a great topic. The challenge is that when you talk to somebody who's struggling to break the $1 million mark, or who has a successful product and is bringing in $1 or $2 or $3 million, and they think, I'm a freaking rock star. this
Yeah.
is good shit. Like I could do this shit, and sit on the beach and
Yeah.
work. When you talk to them and you say, hey, let's develop a team, let's develop a culture. Oh my God. Well, I'm not big enough to have a culture. I'm not big enough
Yeah.
to have a team. I run everything with independent contractors. And that's okay. Right.
Sure.
So I've got companies where we have a lot of employees. I also have companies where we have just independent contractors, or a combination of independent contractors and vendors and employees. And
Yeah.
everything can work incredibly well. The definition of team could be any of that, could be a combination of any of that. So if we go back to when you were doing, 6 figures or 7 figures and trying to figure it out, but you couldn't figure it out, the
Yeah.
mindset shift that had to happen there.
Yeah.
What do you think the biggest mindset shift was that impossible?
I mean, it's really, just one sec here. It's really about getting people, or focusing myself and having that conversation with myself that, you're not going to be able to go beyond where you're at now, and then just kind of deciding what you're okay with, in terms of what it is that you want to develop into and become. The like it's you just have to be honest and make that decision as to whether or not, you're gonna decide you want to grow something that is meaningful and, achieve all those things that you set out to do in your life, or if you're just gonna run this very simple, easy type of model and be satisfied with just doing that. And it really boils down to individuals, because, personally, I'm not wired that way. I like growth. I like to learn, and I like to push as far as I can.
Yeah, you and I are the exact same, as we both know when it comes to that. So there's 4 parts of it for me when it comes to how I had to go through this mental shift, right? It was, I don't have to do it all. That was the big deal. Like I, I, I thought I had to do everything. So I made that shift. And then the next shift was I can hire somebody, right?
Yeah.
Literally, I was stuck in, I don't have to do it all, not just because I thought I was the best, but also because I didn't know how to hire somebody. And I thought, well, we just go to one of these vendor platforms online and we hire a one-off person. Hopefully they work. Hopefully, there's not a storm in their country and all electricity goes down in the middle of a project. So after that, so I could hire somebody, and then it was, I can lead others, right? It was a big mental gap for me to think that I could lead others. And then from that progression was the last one, which is I could create leaders. And I think as entrepreneurs, or strong entrepreneurs who actually want to build multiple companies, to CEOs, people who really want to get away from the implementation and create these structures that are duplicatable and sellable, to go into that cycle, you need to be able to get to the point where you feel like you could develop a leader. And if
Right.
you could get to that point, which is very difficult. I mean, you were forced into it in the military, like you were trained to understand how to develop a team. Most people are not. Most people don't have that crazy background. But
Yeah. I mean, again, very, very different though, because there's so many different, power structures, and, you in some of those situations you're afforded, the ability to leverage rank. That's not my idea of a good leader, and in fact quite the opposite. But inside of a business, the approach is so much more collaborative, and you know, the requirement to engage people in such a different way, where you're not just flat out saying, you know, do X because, you know, it's a whole different process altogether.
Yeah, it is getting people to, instead of telling people what to do, it's
Yep.
getting people to take ownership and
Sure.
then be creative and tell you, hey, I know we do it this way. This is great, but I think we could tweak it and get better results doing this. Would you be okay with testing that? And oh my God, you know, so many employees are afraid to bring that to an owner's attention. So many owners would literally sit there and say, holy crap, that's awesome. It's
Yeah.
your idea might suck, but the fact that you brought it to me, that's awesome. Let's do it. And we'll see
Yeah.
what happens, right? Because you
Yeah.
encourage that ownership.
Absolutely. And that's what, you know, we kind of have this internal mantra that we grow together. And it's hard to really quantify that for people until I think at some time they see how that impacts them. And we try to do that by, at the moment, by creating experiences where, you know, you might not get to do this thing otherwise, but for being a part of this team. And as we start to evolve and meet our targets, meet our growth projections, and those kinds of things, we try to implement ways that people are going to start to realize that the more I contribute, the more that I a part of this team, the more I actually feel like I'm growing personally as well, both on an individual level as well as financially, right? Because the two are often hand in hand, or, you know, it's a very different different leadership style, I suppose, different workforce that's out there today. And you know, I listen to some of the people complain about, you know, the employees that are out there. But if you as a leader are not engaging them in the right way, that's on you.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, it's got nothing to do with the workforce. The workforce has always had its things. Imagine when our grandparents, you know, were out there picking rocks, and they came in and, you know, saw the kids sitting around the table listening to the radio. Those lazy sons of bitches, you know, that's all they do is listen to that radio. You know, every generation has had its thing that's a distraction to work, right? I mean, it's just finding that way, finding those intrinsic and extrinsic motivators for your crew, and you know, leveraging them to benefit that entity that you want to build, and to grow them individually.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were talking about before, right? It is the growth mindset. It's not the business person who wants to grow a small business who looks at it and then complains about what's the workforce is out there. It's the high growth entrepreneur. It's the person who really wants to grow this entity and potentially duplicate it and create other businesses, that looks and says, this is what I've got access to right now. How do we leverage that? How do we
Yeah.
take that? How do we take advantage of this situation, not of the people, but the situation, to create an environment or a culture that makes that group comfortable so that they could do what they're really great at? Because every single generation, including, you know, what some people call the laziest of generations, but every generation has these core competencies that if we as business people can leverage, it's freaking transformational, and it keeps us on the curve or ahead of the curve for everything that's coming up.
Yeah.
It's tremendous.
And that's the thing, you know, like, successful is getting out and sort of recognizing the trends that are coming, or not sitting on our hind legs just kind of waiting. We're always trying to not so much reinvent, but just look at what's working and try to apply it in a different way that makes more sense, that makes creates as good, but also
Oh, you're cutting out.
the environment for everybody on the team, that they're excited to keep continuing to work on this thing, because we're always innovating. Innovating is important, in my opinion, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Our companies, each one of my companies is a learning organization. We are constantly encouraging people to check out books from our physical library inside the offices, or from our virtual library, check out video programs, and then not just check them out to keep them reading, to keep them up to date on things, but also we ask them to, once a month, every employee kind of has to create a small PowerPoint presentation and record it as a summary, a condensed summary of what they just read in that book or watched in that video series, and then teach it, right? In a PowerPoint presentation. Now, here's the value of this. It has nothing to do with other people ever watching those little training videos that they're creating. I don't care. And to be quite honest, I don't even know if anybody watches them. If they do, that's phenomenal. But all I care about is that when somebody learns something and they are forced to distill it and then teach it, it gets ingrained into their head much stronger. That's all I want, is I want them to be able to teach it, whether somebody watches it or not.
Yeah, the fastest way to become competent is to become a teacher of the skill. And it's interesting when I go back to just flying helicopters, for example, when I actually had to explain a piece of what I was learning to the other guys in the room, the synapses that were created and connected in my brain were so much deeper. Then of course repetition is how you build on that. But just the depth of understanding a concept, to your point, is so much more when you actually have to convey it in a way for other people to hear it and condense it into and learn that, for sure.
Yeah. I used to ingrain this in everybody's mind over here, that if you really want something, make it a study. And then several years back, we kind of had to take a step back and add a little bit more to that, where it's not just, hey, if you really, really want something in life or in business or in your career, make it a study, but it's also make it a study and then teach it, right? And that's where that whole teaching platform came from inside of my organizations. And it works scientifically. There's so much science to back this up that it works. And to be quite honest, to take that whole, hey, read a book a week, read a book a month, whatever it is, to keep you ahead of everybody else in your industry, to take that and just add that one little thing. I mean, what does it take you to read a book? Even somebody who's really good at reading a book, it still may take them days, if not a week or more, to read the book. But to create a short PowerPoint presentation that distills it in your mind and puts it down into bullet points on 5 or 6 slides, that may take an hour, yet it ingrains it and it makes it part of your personality. So that's a lot of fun. Hey, so your meeting coming up this week.
Yes.
I'm totally stoked about this. I am really excited about it. It's your first big one, right?
Yep. It's our first one that is very, very structured in terms of what the outcomes are that we want, and we've really broken it down into 2 components. The first component is that we talked about already is the bonding, because I believe when people are bonded to each other, when they have some mental and physical connection, their desire and ability to work together is increased. And then the second thing, which is where this has been our biggest hurdle, challenge, whatever you want to call it, is improving performance. And I mean that from ourselves in the way that we deliver messages to the team and structure feedback and providing them with what they need to know to execute on a task, to increasing accountability for each individual, so they have a very clear, concise path that when we establish our different areas that we want to grow in a quarter, where you call them rocks or whatever, that every activity around that is measured, it's examined, it is answered to and for. And that always introduces that potential for conflict or
Hey, Todd, you cut out, man.
around a
You
lack
cut
of.
for a
Oh,
second there. So it always increases intention towards.
yeah, towards basically get being accountable for a result. And what we want to be better at is any activity that you're doing better be anchored to the 3 or 4 growth items that we've identified as critical for that quarter, and always holding people to a measurable standard that is reasonable, that is within their core competency, and kind of the specific tasks that we designate as ours. So we really have, as we started out with 0 all the way to building org charts, to understanding roles and functions, and all of these things. And so now we're just putting all of those pieces into this machine that rolls along and produces this result that we established based on predictability, right? So.
Yeah, I remember when we first started talking about all that stuff. Hey, and the next progression to this, right? So you went through the org chart, process org chart, the tasks inside of each one of the boxes inside your org chart, the most important actions, the most important metrics. Now it's annual meeting, which is freaking game changing. And I'm so excited that you not just embraced this, you took it to the next level with helicopter experiences, and with it's just amazing what I believe is going to happen from there. After that, however, the next thing, which I don't want you to announce at the annual meeting, nobody should know about this yet. But the next thing is going to be performance appraisals, because a well-run performance appraisal system, meaning people understand that it's going to happen every 6 months or so, and they know what to expect, and people get freaked out a little bit in the beginning, but then when they see that it's a performance appraisal to actually recognize them for the great things that they've done, and give them the opportunity to work towards the next performance appraisal, which may mean an advancement in the company. It is freaking great. But combine that with 360 reviews. 360 meaning 360 reviews on every single person in the company, including you, including Adam, including the partners, including everybody inside your company. You're going to get so much feedback that is positive. You're going to get, positive meaning it'll help the company to grow to the next level. It'll point out holes that you may not see, that I can't see, but that only people who are running each department will be able to see. And it'll be crazy. The 8 months or 12 months after you start doing 360 reviews and performance appraisals, you're going to see a marked shift in organization, in revenue, in new outside the box ideas that come to your table about how to easily grow without that much more investments. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I mean, those are they're so important for guiding learning on both sides of that relationship. I mean, I've dealt with people where they just simply would not take a 360 review. They had no interest in it. And, I would say at that point, you probably know that you suck. So you're just, you're just rocking, the power dynamic and leveraging that till either you get fired or you get promoted or you retire. One of the 3, right? but those can be hard pills to swallow too, right? And the requirement to set aside your ego for the desire to learn and grow individually, it provides remarkable opportunities, just whether or not people want to embrace them,
Yeah. Well,
and if you don't, then you shouldn't be leading people, in my opinion.
exactly. Well, you can't be leading people if you don't want the review of your
Yeah.
ability to lead.
Yeah.
I remember the very first time I took a 360 review, and I'll be honest with you, I did it with gritted teeth. I didn't know that there was going to be value in it. This is many years ago, many companies ago. It was a different life for me.
Yeah.
And but I still have it. I still have it somewhere in my closet over here. I still have it in this office. I know it's here. I could feel it calling to me. I review it. I find it maybe once a year or so I come across it, and I review it. And there's some of the input on there is just, it was defining as
Yeah.
to my future path, which led me to successes.
Yeah. And I mean, man, I have no attachment to not hearing, because there are areas where I'm forced into in my role, and I just know that I suck at, and so I'm constantly, and what to that point, if it's like seeing a rat, if you see one, there's 10. Right. So if I suck at one, I know I suck at 10.
Yeah.
So, but back to that saying that's hilarious is, you don't know what you don't know, but that's how you learn it, right? And that's how you become better at it. And if you're engaged and you want to grow a company, then these are the things.
Yeah, without a doubt. Hey, I have a quick question, which might not be a quick answer, but I think it would be extremely valuable for people to hear. You made a decision to change brand. You made a decision to. So let me just set the stage. You were a smaller entity. You were taking actions that kept you as a smaller entity. You changed some of those actions. You grew massively as a company, as an individual, as a leader. And here, now that you're up here, you're looking back and you're saying, wow, the future is significantly better if we brand properly. Like we didn't really brand, like there's so many people who get into business and they don't care about brand, which they care about revenue, which is normal. That's okay. And then they get to a point where when they start focusing on brand, shit grows much faster. Shit becomes much easier.
So when I go back to my original reason for getting involved in this, and it was to transform lives, and however it was that we could achieve that, I was, that was the mission. I wanted to impact 1 million lives around the globe, and that's kind of an abstract thing, but as we started to evolve and actually achieve these things that we set out in our 1, 3, 5-year goals, and looking at it, the methodology that we were using was a bit fragmented. And when we started a trajectory of growth to create some cohesion in the various different offerings that we wanted to create, it became, there was just too much incongruence, both from a personal level and the mission, to right down to the products. There was no alignment. And where I felt like we could make the biggest impact was to take what it was that we originally started to do and look at how we could frame it in the context of one unified offer that had all of these multiple components to it that could service our clients and the customers across a broad range of the things that might be influencing their life, with the ultimate goal to create some measure of transformation in their life. And it just became necessary to develop the brand, one singular focus, rather than all of these crazy offshoots that were to create, or it became impossible to facilitate any type of growth, because you couldn't speak that many different languages effectively. And I think it became apparent to the customer that it was like, you're kind of this over here, but you're kind of this over here. It doesn't feel, and they see through bullshit in an instant. And, that was ultimately impacts your ability to grow.
Yeah, it is. It's the difference between an entrepreneur who's an octopus and has 8 different plates spinning, a product over here that's doing weight loss, a product over here that's doing longevity, a product over here that's doing something else like joint health, all of which are amazing, but different categories of people, right? Trying to pull them all into the same funnel. And then what do I set up multiple memberships? Do I set one big membership? Do I this? And it becomes a scattered mindset as compared to the whale that literally just keeps moving forward with this giant goal. Like you said, your goal was to transform lives. Yeah. Our goal in the beginning, the very beginning, that has followed us through every single entity that I've been part of. We started in the health industry, multiple different health companies, and we're in the legal industry, the publishing industry, the branding industry. We got so many, my hands in so many different companies now. It's still the same at the heart, is to help the greatest number of people possible. Yeah. So it was when you said that, I took a step back and I wrote a note down, because it's our paths are so similar. The goal to go out there and actually help people is amazing. Now, neither one of us can, went on that path to help people and just stayed there. We figured, well, in order to help people, we got to come out with all these different products, because then we could get people into a funnel, and people won't actually use our stuff unless they pay us. So we have to charge for this. And then it becomes this whole butt fuck of everything that's potentially hurtful to a company.
Sure.
Right? And it's distracting. And then when we get really focused on what the few actions that actually drive growth, which really is relationships. It's how do we build the right people inside of our organization? How do we develop them? And how do we go out there and help the greatest number of people as customers and over deliver to them and really provide an experience for them, instead of just give them a product? And it doesn't make a difference, again, what industry we're in. Even in the legal industry that I'm in right now, it's the exact same focus. How do we go out there and find our target audience, position ourselves, our brand in front of them in a credible way, and then over deliver for whatever they come to us for, and build a relationship there. Because if we could build a relationship, even at a $14 price point compared to maybe a $40,000 price point, doesn't make a difference. If you could build a relationship here and make somebody feel confident that they did not just get screwed by getting into bed with you, whether they bought an ebook or a video program or a consulting program or whatever, if they could feel confident in the relationship, everything's much better.
Yeah, and I mean that's our biggest focus right now. We've figured out in an effective way how to bring them through the door. And now what we want to do is give them an experience unlike, so extraordinary. They should be willing this membership to their kids. You know what I mean? Like, that's,
that's a great analogy, because you do want that. Which may sound stupid to some people. If there's such great value inside of your community, if you are literally giving content and helping people to become better at whatever it is that the membership does, then they should want to share that with a lot of people, especially their family.
Yeah.
And when you get to that point, know you're over delivering, and you know that this is good. Now I need to go into hyperdrive. Now I need to go into duplication mode. Now I need to get this message out there in a big, big, big way.
Yeah, and that's our beachhead, right? That's the next thing that you can have somebody, and this is what entrepreneurs do. They come up with the big idea, but unless you build that system um, in behind that beachhead, it's just gonna go. You'll just keep doing that, right? Once you've identified it, um, the system and the process has to be built in behind it in order for it to either sustain or to grow, or deliver whatever it is that you're setting out to deliver.
Yeah. So hey, let's wrap up
Okay.
in a way that gives value. Let's talk about something that you wish you hadn't done in business. Had you had the time to do it all over again right now, starting from scratch, although I know that makes your eye twitch probably. But you had to do it all over again. What's something that you did that you wish you hadn't done?
um, I man, there's a few things, but I think what it was I hesitated. Um, right back, I can go back and I can go back to 2008, and I hesitated on going to one of these groups because back then $5,000 was a lot of money, right? And so we can talk about that from a mastermind perspective. I hesitated and did it all myself. And had I walked through that door then, I'd be, you know, exponentially further ahead, I think. I mean, who knows? Things happen for various different reasons, but to distill it down to something that I wish I didn't do, I wish I wouldn't have hesitated. I wish I would have said, yeah, this is for me. This feeds my soul in such a way that I know it's right, and we can go back and we can discuss the fear around that and how to overcome that. I mean, there's a million things around that, but just to pinpoint it down to one thing, I wouldn't have hesitated at the door. I would have blasted through the thing and you know, not been doing it all myself. I would have got the people, would have done whatever I could to get those people to help along the way, because your growth is exponentially faster.
No matter what stage of growth you're at, we all need an unbiased review of what's working and also what might not be working anymore in our business. Because the greatest cause of stagnation in any company, the reason most companies hit plateaus in their growth, is because they fail to see the roadblocks that stop momentum in its tracks.